So first of all, we need a little bit of space, don't need any other kit, perhaps just a mat for a bit more comfort. We're going to start with our feet fairly wide, and we're going to try and keep that space between the 2 feet. Now we're going to rock onto one foot, over onto the other side, maintaining that balance, and we're going to catch on one foot, on one hip, on one side, before we then come over to the other. We're not just sort of tipping over there. I want you to be in charge of when you decide to go back the other way, rather than just momentum doing it. Legs are strong and tight and straight, and our hips are pushed forward. We're not sort of slouching and stepping across, if you like. We're rocking over from side to side there. And we're going to do about 20 of those. My clicking ankles. Okay, and just to loosen them up a little bit more, so a few squats, feet just a bit wider than your shoulders, hit your comfortable position, just down and up. Depending what you've been doing prior to going into this session, you might not need to do all of this bit. If you've just come back from your run, or you're tagging this onto the end of a weight session or a strength session, you can just go straight into it. Okay, next up we're going to do a kneeling version of a hip flexor stretch. There's plenty of options for these, but we're just going to have a look at this one today. So we're going to come into a lunged position, knee down on the floor. Now we're going to do a posterior tilt. Now most of the time when we're running, we're aiming to get towards a neutral posture through our hips and our waist. Most often we tend to go into what's called an anterior pelvic tilt, where our lower back gets a little bit tightened here. We get shorter through this range of movement here, and our tummy is relaxed and sticks forward like so. Now, particularly people who find they are a bit susceptible to hamstring tightnesses, or that sensation of being tight in the hamstrings, or little niggles or pains that come a little bit further up into the crease of your bum, the top of the back of your thigh. That can sort of be contributed for the fact that that anterior tilt that we get into, that shortness and tightness here and here, is actually just putting that little bit more strain in your hamstring when we're standing. That posture there, the hamstrings are always in a semi-tensed and lengthened position. So what we want to try and find is our neutral posture, which is pulling the tummy in or tucking the tailbone underneath. That's going to allow us to get a little bit of tension on the front of our hip. Once we've got that tension, we're just going to lock it tight on our tummy and then just ease forward onto the hip there. And for the moment, we're just going to hold that stretch. Now, as I mentioned before, when we create some space in the front of our hip, that's going to allow us to work through our glutes. In terms of referring back to those who experience that little bit of tension or that tight sensation in your hamstrings, if we can create that space and get your hips to come back to that neutral position, that's just going to take some of that additional strain away from your hamstrings and might just sort of ease that for you. Now when we've held that stretch for about 20 seconds, we're going to do 10 repetitions of easing forwards and back. Just trying to work on lengthening and opening up that space. Quite often when we're stretching, we tend to just go to a particular point and hold there. Actually, we want to try and go further than that. We're trying to make more room and make more space. It's important to consider your breathing as well. We relax more as we breathe out. So try not to hold your breath. And last one, squeeze and push forward. So about 10 after you've held for the static portion of the stretch. And we'll do the other side. So good stride. Again, tuck that tailbone underneath, so that posterior tilt there, rather than the anterior pelvic tilt that we tend to end up in. We're trying to go the other way. So posterior or neutral. Squeeze and push forward and get to a held stretch position there. Again, if you're not feeling it in the front of that hip or the top of that thigh area there, and the rectus femoris, you've perhaps just gone a little bit slack and lazy through your middle. We're collapsing through here, so pull back in, tighten up and push that hip forwards. Again, once we've held for about 20 seconds, we'll just do today 10 repetitions or so. Again, not bouncing, just easing forwards. Again, maintain your form with that. We're not going slack and easing a long way forward. I've gone a long way forward there, but I haven't increased any stretch because I've lost my support, my body support system there. So that's about 10 on each side. So we're going to go down onto the mat properly now. I'm just going to run through a few exercises that you can incorporate into your routine. So first one, it looks quite similar to a side plank position. So you're going to have your elbow underneath your shoulder. We're going to bend the bottom knee and the top leg is going to be straight. Now there's going to be a little bit of work on the underneath side, but we're going to be working the top side as well. So I'm going to lift my hips up off the floor. I've got a straight line all the way through my body. I'm not sat back into my hips and my bum. My hips are pushed forward, facilitated by my glutes. Fingertips are there just for a little bit of support. Now we're going to work this top leg. You're going to lift it upwards and turn it back slightly and try and take that back leg, that top leg back slightly. So working here and we're squeezing through here. We're going to hold for about 10 seconds and then we're going to come back in and back down for a moment. Going to lift again, turn back slightly, strong through this top glute and strong from this underneath, really trying to raise the hips up and then relax back down. Today we'll do one more. Lift up, push the hips forward, lift the top leg, turn back. And then back down. I'm going to do the other side. What we're working on is building up from anywhere between 1 to 10 repetitions of that 10-second hold if you can. So again, elbow underneath your shoulder, top leg straight, bending the bottom leg at 90 degrees at the knee. We're going to lift upwards, lift the top foot, squeeze back, turning that externally rotating from the hip, which is just going to turn the foot backwards and upwards slightly, lifting up away from the floor, aiming for about 10 seconds, and then back down, lifting up again, good straight line again through the body. And back down. And to balance it out, we're going to do one more. Lifting the hips, squeeze back. And relax. Again, aiming to work up to towards 10 repetitions of 10 seconds of that would be a great challenge to work up to. Next up, we're going to go onto our side. This time I'm going to rest on my hand, my elbows pointing forwards, and both legs are straight to begin with. So from here, again, I can use my fingertips for a little bit of support. My hips are stacked, so I'm not rolling back and sat on my bum. I'm not falling forwards. They're stacked on top of each other. And we've just tried to create a little bit of space through your waist. So if you just get a couple of fingertips underneath through there, that little bit of core engagement. Now with the top foot, keeping this leg parallel to the floor, we're going to try and perform 10 cycles of a bike, if you like. 10 repetitions. Two more. And then we're going to go the other way. Again, keeping the top leg parallel to the floor. Still switched on through your middle. 8, 2 more. Good. And then from there, this time, lift the foot to the start position. Again, it's about parallel to the floor, keeping the tension in the hip and the glute. This time we're going to tap in front, tap behind. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, keep both legs straight. 1. Good. Should feel like there's a build-up of tension in the hip and the glute area, which is good, what we're after. Next one. The bottom leg is going to stay straight. We're going to bring this top leg up to 90 degrees and 90 degrees at the foot as well. We're going to lift the leg, so again it's parallel to the floor, and we're going to externally rotate at the hip, which is just going to lift the foot up and down through here. So it's not a big movement, very controlled, still got lots of control through your middle here. We're going to aim for 10 of these. And 10. Good. Change over, to the side. So again, resting your head on your hand. Good straight line through the body, the hips are stacked, tummy's pulled in, fingertips for a little bit of balance. And we're going to start with your pedaling of the top foot, the top leg. There, 10. 3, 2, 1, and then the other way. Again, keeping this top leg parallel to the floor. Last one. Good. And from there, still stacked. Good balance again. This time, we're going to tap in front and behind. 10, 9, 8, 6, 4, 3. Keeping both legs straight and strong. Last one. Good. Then keeping the bottom leg straight, bring the top one up to 90 degrees at the hip, knee and the foot as well. Dorsiflex, pulling the toes up towards the shins. Get the top leg parallel to the floor, and then we're just externally rotating from the hip, still keeping all this core control. The knee stays about the same height off the floor, but the foot is lifting up higher. Should feel the work through here. 8, 2 more. There we go. Good. So you should have felt like there's some good work coming on through your glutes. Next up, we're going to go down onto your back. and work on some bridge options. So bridge can work with your feet further out or further in, depending if we're trying to work your hamstrings a little bit more or if we're trying to work your glutes. So the purpose of this little article is your glutes. So we want to bring your feet, your heels up towards your bum, shoulders are relaxed down, hands down on the floor, and all I want us to work on is squeezing and pushing upwards, strong up through the hips. You'll be tight along here as well. Your feet are about hip to shoulder width apart. Now what we're looking at is we're not excessively arching up through the ribs. The ribs are settled down. The gap between your lower ribs and your hips doesn't increase as we lift up. We're just trying to keep it the same. After about 10 seconds, and then we're going to come back down. And again, squeezing upwards, nice and strong. Just use your fingertips just to test, is there tension in your glutes? Are you holding it well from there, creating a good space between the floor and yourself? Again. Again, try and keep breathing. And we'll do one more for now. Again, try and visualise that your glutes are opening up those hips for you. And back down. Good. So that option, we did 4 lots of a 10-second hold then. Start with a couple. Your aim is to build up to 10 reps of 10 seconds. 1 to 3 sets of those, depending on what you've been doing before and how many times through the week you intend to do that workout. Next one. From there, we're going to do single leg thruster. So you're gently going to bring one thigh towards you, lightly holding your shin just to keep it in place. Again, this foot, bring your heel towards your bum. Again, we're trying not to create too much extra space through your ribs and your hips. You're just trying to keep that connection from there. Keeping your foot well planted, you're going to squeeze and push up and back down. Today we're going to do 15 repetitions of those. Another 5, nice and strong. Good, and then the other side. So the reason we're holding on to this leg and this option of the exercise is it just helps to keep your hips and pelvis in the right sort of position for us. If our legs are out, sometimes we see that people actually get the lift through their lower back and the lift through here, rather than when that leg is gently brought up, it just helps to put us into the correct tilt position in your pelvis, which means that your glutes are going to be doing the work rather than excessively loading through your lower back. We'll do another 3, 2, 1. Again, 1 to 3 sets of that exercise, 10 to 20, 25 reps, until you feel like you've got the load in the area and you'll know when you've done just about enough. Certainly if you're including it in a bit of a circuit with some other things as well. Final one, this time we're working on the balance from side to side through your pelvis. So we're going to lift up into the bridge, same set position, heels in towards your bum, feet about hip to shoulder width apart, squeezing and lifting. And what we're going to do this time is gently march through one foot off the floor to the other. Now what will probably want to happen at first is if we're a bit too quick transitioning and just going like that, then we'll dip from our hips from side to side. What we want is when our both feet are on the floor and our hips are level, we want to maintain that position even though there's only one foot on the floor. So we're getting some stability through that hip and pelvis. Now with this exercise, we'll try and stay up anywhere between 10 to 60 seconds or so. If you only find that you can manage it and execute it well for 10 or 15 seconds, then just break that 60-second target up into 3 or 4 sets, if you like. So 15 seconds, drop back down, have a moment, lift back up again, and then relax back down. Now a nice bit of release after all that glute work is just rest the top foot over the back of your other knee, just gently easing across. Keep both shoulders down, shoulder blades back onto the floor. Use your other hand just to facilitate that little bit of release across there. One of my favourite stretches. In about 10 or 20 seconds just for a little bit of relief. And then the other side, gently back across. Load up. Over you go. Back to the middle. Okay, good. So, we've gone through a little bit of the reason why it's important to focus on the lower back, your hips and your glute region. We did a bit of a stretch at first just to open them up. There's plenty of stretches out there that may work for you, and the little and often approach is a good way forward. And then we've used a few floor exercises to really hone in on the correct areas in our glutes. Now, these are the sort of exercises that work best, again, being done little and often. So you could do some of these most days of the week, 3, 4, 5 days a week. And even if you didn't do all of those, you just did 5 or 10 minutes, but a little bit of something on those 4 or 5 days of the week, rather than spending 45 minutes to an hour once a week and then not addressing them for the full rest of the week. You're better to do those little bits and just keep going back to them. Consistency, if you don't go near them for a full week, then you've got a full week with the bad habits that might creep in, those tightnesses and shortnesses that might reoccur. Whereas because sort of staying on that theme, you're still sitting down the next day, and then the next day, and then the day after that. You're still running, perhaps in that compromised form each day or every other day or whatever. And so we also want to try and correct some of that in equal measure. So little and often, the more often you do it, the better you can hone in on your form and your technique, and you can get better feedback about what's going on. So you'll notice if things start to feel a little bit better, or you feel like your running is in, that was a fresh run, or that was a bouncy run, or I felt good on that run. Perhaps that's because you're starting to do some of these extracurricular stuff. Now, where you could do this exercise or this workout in terms of around your other training, now because we've done quite a lot of work around there, it might be quite a good idea to go and do your recovery run, see if things feel a little bit better, because we've tried to restore a little bit of an idealistic normality, if you like. We don't often get to that point because it's an ongoing struggle, but it's a good opportunity perhaps to go and test it now we've done a bit of work there. Alternatively, you might have gone out for your run, come back, and then just as a bit of an ease down, 5 or 10 minutes, find a bit of space and get down on the floor and get into that work, and then finish with a few stretches and stuff as well. So use it as you wish, but little and often throughout the week rather than one big chunk. And yeah, see how you get on. Bye. Cheers.